Welcome, fellow audio enthusiasts. My name is Jason, and this is two-channel listening. Now, I want to take a quick moment to explain why my channel is different from everybody else. First and foremost, I'm not chasing the manufacturers and all of their brand new products that they seem to be releasing on a weekly basis. So, one, I don't chase what's the latest and greatest, and I'm not looking for handouts from any of the manufacturers. Two, I put my money where my mouth is. I'm the one who does the research, and I go out to find what I think is the best return on investment product within a specific category, mainly within the integrated amplifiers and the stand mount speakers or floor standing speakers. So if you will, I'm a little bit of a specialist. I will play with some different DACs from time to time, but this is not a broad range channel where I would skip around all different products from week to week to week. So one example that should be pretty specific for everybody is that one week I may be covering off on a $250 all-in-one integrated amplifier, something I think is novel and neat and might have its use for your desktop, for your bedroom, or for the garage. And it's a value product that hits a lot of boxes. What you won't find is that in the week after that, I'm jumping onto a $5,000 DAC. That's not going to happen on this channel because the other piece of it is, like I said, I'm the one who's paying for these products. So I do the research, I look for a particular product that I find interesting, it is not often talked about, is definitely flying under the radar, or like some products, they get left in the shadow of their more popular siblings. I have to say that this gives me greater freedom to be able to be truthful with you guys and say what it is that I need to say about a product. The other piece is I pride myself on having a certain level of integrity. And many of you see that I buy something new every single week and I'm covering off on a new product. But what some are failing to connect the dots on is the very fact that how you know that I'm being totally honest with you is the fact that at the end of the review, either the product stays and it becomes one of my new favorites that has to get knocked off its platform by something else, or the very fact that you will know that I've flipped it right away and it'll be for sale on my website immediately after the review. Two cases in point. The Name 5SI integrated amplifier. I had high hopes for that. I reviewed that a few weeks ago, and as a $1,700 integrated amplifier, it was underwhelming to me, and I immediately went to flip and sell that particular product. On the other side of that, a product that I gush over on a regular basis that happens to be my baseline product that I use with speakers is my Unison Research Unico P integrated amplifier. That's been with me since episode number 1. This is episode number 24, folks. So there's where my integrity lies. If it is what I say it is, you will see it week after week and it'll become a part of the theme. If it doesn't make the cut, it gets sold. Now, that's not to say that I don't or I am not collecting up to 3s of some things. Yes, at this particular juncture, I do happen to have 3 speakers that I am holding on to and keeping for the foreseeable future, but it's just one more example where I have the Tecton Arus coming up here pretty soon. Will the Zoo Dirty Weekends stay where they are, or will those Tecton Arus knock the Dirty Weekends off of their platform and no longer be my reference floor standing speaker? So that's just a few of the main examples of how my channel is different. It's a king of the hill type of an attitude where I buy something looking for that next level reference product, yet I'm keeping it within a particular price point so that you don't see anything that's in the stratosphere on this channel or outside of the stratosphere on this channel. So, value products, and bringing me full circle to this week's product, the Peachtree Audio Nova 150. This guy did get some of its heyday back when it was released in late 2016, and John Darko did a very fantastic write-up on this particular product. But I've noticed that since then, it's stayed in the shadows of the Nova 300 and in particular the Nova 500. As with all things in product cycles, Peachtree has already updated their website again. They've brought on their new and latest and greatest preamp DAC, and the other product that I had reviewed 2 months ago happened to be the Peachtree Deco Sky 125, their entry-level integrated amplifier that also had the Bluetooth Wi-Fi capability. Now, that product's discontinued and it's already off their websites. So their new entry-level product happens to be now the Nova 150. I was interested in the Nova 150 because it sits just above where the Deco left off, and at a retail of $1,599, I was intrigued in what those extra $600 give you, being that you lose the Wi-Fi Bluetooth capability. Now that's not a big deal to me. I'm not a huge lover of doing the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi audio. I prefer to do everything through USB. This is 150 watts into 8 ohms or 250 watts into 4 ohms. It's the next generation of the BO devices, the ICE amps, or more known as Class D. A lot of folks have already written off B&O as old technology, which is really interesting to me because a company of BO's magnitude and the money that they put into revising those products and updating them, it seems pretty interesting that everybody's jumped onto the Purify these days or the latest HypX, X-HypX modules. I'm here to tell you that you cannot write off the latest generation of ICE amps from B&O. And definitely Peachtree understands innovation and value to a T. This is the 5th Peachtree product that I've owned in 10 years. And I'm not going to get into all its functionality. There's a couple of things that I think are of very important notes, and also not often talked about as people they get stuck on specs and they want to buy specifically for specs. Now, I'm not talking about, all-out frequencies. I'm not talking about having flat charts. I'm just talking about those people who want the horsepower for the sake of having the horsepower. With this Peachtree Nova 150 at $1,599, I don't want to get the retailer in trouble because they've been awesome to me and I've bought several products from them. So I'm not sure if they were even supposed to sell to me what they did new, but let's just say I got a really good discount on a brand new Nova 150, which when taken as a whole, I can't come close to thinking of another product at what I paid that will touch this Nova 150. Now, the Nova 300 is $2,200. There's only 2 differences. Only 2 differences. Only 2 differences. Yes, there's not an echo. The amp section, the headphone amp section in the Nova 300 and 500 are upgraded from the 150. So if you're a Head-Fi guy, you might be interested in spending that additional $700 for that, or the fact that you have 300 watts at 8 ohms versus 150 watts at 8 ohms. Now, there's a curious thing about that, and this may or may not play into my own segue with, okay, let's save as much money as you can, get the best integrated you can at a certain price point, and put all that money towards your favorite speaker of choice. Unless you're running Apogees, unless you're running Sound Labs, unless you're running some, big ass of those old Carvers, the Platinums, I don't quite understand why folks think they need 300 watts on tap. And it's not that I'm trying to take anything away from the Nova 300. I'm just trying to over illustrate what an amazing budget product this is at the price point it can be had. Now, several of them are showing up on Hi-Fi Shark in that $1,100 to $1,200 range used. I happen to buy this pretty close to what those used prices were, which makes it just all the more of an awesome value to me. But back to the power ratings. The performance ones are 90 dB efficient. The Ascend Acoustic Sierra 2EX, are 86 dB efficient. At no point will this thing ever run out of headroom. At no point would I need all 150 watts from the Nova. You have USB-B. You have USB-A, which is good for you iPhone folks, or if you have iPads, you're able to directly link to this integrated amplifier and bypass the internal DAC of any of the Apple products. So from that perspective, this is also a leap forward product that gives you that extra grip or control over your iPhone items. You have a loop system. Now, the loop in and out to this particular Nova line, V2 line, is interesting and something that I think kind of goes unspoken or underappreciated in what Peachtree is doing to be very forward thinking. Now, the loop in and loop out option for this particular unit, the Nova, with also this selector right here, they made that not for the tape folks, but for the DSP folks, the room correction folks. Now, this is something I want to take advantage of in the future when I get into the new house, as I've explained to many of you, that with this loop feature, if you have, say, a mini DSP, you're able to connect the mini DSP out to it and then back in before the amplifier section so that you can actually run a room correction setup. Some other key points of what I find that tend to be extremely useful for me and my appreciation factor for the design of this integrated amplifier, especially at its price point. The volume integration. Kudos to Peachtree for its volume integration. Where I complained a lot about the Deca 125, when you hit the volume control on that, it jumped several dB with just the slightest touch. And it was very difficult for me to find that just right playback volumes in my intimate setting, especially when you get with the higher efficiency speakers. That could exacerbate the dB jump with higher efficiency speakers. So for the Nova, it has a much more broadband scale, or finer dB increments, half dB increments, is how they've integrated the volume here. So, you know, that's a much appreciated piece, and I'm surprised to find that at its price point. The other very special and happy piece that I like, or functionality, is the remote itself. Now we're getting into this realm where integrated amplifiers seem to be wanting to go to app-only functionality. And it's a way of saying, oh, look, we've cut some costs. We're not spending money to supply you with a remote. You can use your phone, which is probably already glued to your hand regardless. So just download this app and you can do the full volume or input selections or whatever you want from your iPhone or Android device. Here's the problem with that that's really already irritating me with another product that I've just started to run in. If you've got an incoming call, you have to spend the time to ignore that call, go to that app, make sure that it's immediately connected to your amplifier, and either turn it off or hit the mute button on that app. So you're taking a lot of additional steps that could be just one click of your remote. The other piece is that if it's only going to connect with the volume or connect with your inputs, you still have to go to your other app if you're in Spotify to either turn that off or choose which one's going to be muted, or to turn off and select the music from your Spotify, your Amazon HD, Tidal, etc., etc. So again, one-click remote. Here's the other beauty, and I find this to be with many Sabre integrated DACs via USB. When the remote allows, which the Peachtree does, it will allow you to skip forward, it will allow you to pause, it will allow you to skip back to a song to repeat that song. And I show a little companion video of me demonstrating that with Amazon HD of what that looks like. I turn the Peachtree on with the remote, and then I push play with the remote, and then you see Amazon playing, and then I hit the skip forward to the next song on Amazon HD playing. I love that simplicity. Thank you for integrating that or making that a part of the Nova line. I wish more manufacturers were doing that with their integrated amplifiers. Going in and screwing with the apps and taking all those extra steps is not simplicity, folks. It's annoying. That's me speaking. So, with that, you do have your digital inputs, you have your coax, you have your SpeedIF, and for you vinyl lovers, you definitely have a phono section, which again John Darko covered off on when he first did a review of this in 2016. For you Wi-Fi and Bluetooth only folks, yes, Peachtree is offering an additional bundle if you buy the Node with this for an extra several $100s. Because Wi-Fi is not doing true high definition or Bluetooth streaming yet, I'm going to say save the money and you can buy yourself this little RS Bloom. It has the aptX. You can use the digital input to the digital, or the digital output to the digital input of the Nova products. It's $120, and that'll still give you full access to your Wi-Fi streaming if that's what you prefer to do. That's just another way to save a couple $100 if you ask me, and you're still going to get a high quality Wi-Fi streaming service. Gosh darn it, I'm holding in my hand a specific piece of paper that is not notes. This is a list of all the integrated amplifiers that I've owned over the last 10 years. And in my mind, I think this may help prove a point of my thought process when I say that this Nova 150, like what John Darko said, is something absolutely spectacular at its price point and has what I can see is no rivals to this juncture. Now, let's be very specific. This has a Sabre reference class 9018 K2M, yes, K2M DAC, and it is a DAC chip that's been in probably over 1,000 different products, different preamps and DACs, or combinations thereof, and it's a very good DAC chip for a reason and supports a lot of different playback. This list of integrated amplifiers, many all cost way more than the Nova 150. So I had an esoteric AI-10. That was a $5,000 Class D integrated amplifier. One of my absolute least favorite integrated amplifiers. The biggest upset of a product that I have ever owned to this date, outside of a few other items. But from an integrated amplifier standpoint, the most disappointing integrated amplifier I ever owned. The Lugsman 550A Mark II. Fantastic integrated amplifier, opposite of the esoteric IA. One of my favorite all-time integrated amplifiers that I owned, be it only a 20 watt Class A integrated at, again, $5,000. no onboard DAC with the Lugsman lineup. So, you know, you have to match speakers very carefully with that Lugsman. Even though it does have a very robust amp section, it could and did run out of headroom or run out of steam with the lesser efficient speakers that I would hook up to that. Now, it was one of my favorite integrated amplifiers with the Zoo Omen Def 2s that I had at that time. And again, cannot hold a candle when it comes to the value proposition against the Nova 150. The Marantz PM15S2 Limited. Not a cheap integrated amplifier. This is better than that amp integrated in every way. Not only does the Marantz not even have an onboard DAC, it's a 90 watt class AB integrated that was very dark, very reticent, and surprisingly, while it looked pretty, did not have the playback quality that could touch this Nova 150. The Macintosh MA6850, I won't even talk about that. I'm not a fan of Macintosh. The Name 5SI from 2 weeks ago. The Name 5SI is still a current product at $1,690 retail. I bought an open box at $100 more than what I paid for this Peachtree. And again, the Name doesn't have an integrated DAC with it. So once again, across the board, the Nova 150 beats that integrated amplifier, hands down. And then the only other one on my list that cost more than the Nova, which is my Unison Research, which happens to be the integrated that's been with me from episode number 1. So the Nova 150, by default, becomes the number 3 best integrated amplifier that I've owned. While it is so hard for me to say, ooh, the Lugsman, God, I loved how that thing sounded. If it's return on investment, if it's, you know, all-out functionality and capability, the Nova replaces the Lugsman 550 Mark II. My Unison Research, again as a hybrid integrated with its tube amp section, has been one of my other super surprise products that completely underrated at its 50 watts. I still to this day do not believe it's 50 watts. It's got to be closer to 80 watts. I have not hooked up any speakers to it that have yet run out of headroom with that particular integrated amplifier. And because of its just refreshing mid-range voicing, it is the integrated amplifier that I always bring out when I want to play the zoos. Now, I did spend a good amount of quality time using the Peachtree with the zoos, and anybody who's a zoo fan knows that Peachtree products do end up at zoo events quite often. And for a while, Sean Casey was actually headlining back then I believe it was the 220 integrated amplifier at that launch. That was showing up at a lot of the audio shows together, and those were paired with a lot of the zoo products. So there's a particular voicing that should also prove to the viewers that Class D has come a long way, that you can pair Class D with very efficient speakers, and you're not getting the grain that you used to get in the late 90s and the early 2000s. When I revert back to that the esoteric IA-10, that was probably one of the harshest, worst sounding implementations of Class D that I had heard from an expensive product, bar none. I mean, it reminded me of some old Class AB Sunfire gear. It just was that bad to me. So believe me, I know what bad Class D sounds like. This has evolved. In the 5 Peachtree products that I've owned, this is one of the cleanest Class D products that I have heard, and I'm coming off of the Red Dragon M1000 monoblocks, which happens to have the B&O ASP 1000 modules in there. So while I don't I do not know what the proprietary modules are in this. I even wanted to take a crack at trying to open this sucker up so that I could show you guys the internals like I always do. This thing stymied me and I didn't want to break something, so I gave up on trying to pop the lid on it. So I don't know exactly what those modules are inside. I did reach out to Peachtree and they did give me some information. Basically, it came down to they did try several different type of HyperX modules, and they just, at the end of the day, for what they cost, it wasn't in line with what the Peachtree sound was, the house sound that they were going for. They even did try Bruno's Purify modules, but then the cost associated with that would have brought the Peachtree pricing way outside of their normal, operating range, and then that again takes away from the innovation and value that Peachtree brings to its fan base. And I absolutely am a fan of Peachtree. That's why I also bought the Nova 150, because it has spent so much time in the shadows of the Nova 300 and the Nova 500. Quickly, once again, I have to say that the Nova 300 at $2,200, I do not see why you would need that unless you have ridiculously inefficient electrostatic speakers or dipoles that take a whole lot of juice. This integrated amplifier at its price point should be able to suffice 90% of the type of speakers that are out there, especially in conjunction with the price point of speakers that we can afford when you're spending $1,500 on an integrated amplifier. If you're buying $20,000 speakers that are inefficient, more than likely you're not going to touch a Peachtree product. That just happens to be the way the world works. So let's be honest with each other. If I get a couple of viewers who say blah blah, this is blah blah, let's be truthful. What are you using? What are you running? And let's make sure it's a fair apples to apples comparison if you're going to write me to say anything about it. Okay. Declarative statement time. I said the Lugsman was number 3. I didn't say where the Unison research landed, did I? Oh, I'm having a hard time with this, guys. I really am. I love my Unison research, but if we're talking again budget, if we're talking an all-in-one category that does the most for its money, the Peachtree 150 is now my #1 integrated amplifier that I own, and on my list, it's the top of the list. The Nova 150, the Unison research is number 2, and the Lugsman 550A Mark II is number 3 in the top 3 all-time integrated amplifiers that I've owned. So from a performance standpoint, again, my hat's off to the folks at Peachtree. I believe that we're living in these times where there is such a narrowing of the gap from and again, there's no deco anymore. This is the new entry-level product on their website. You have their entry-level budget product, and then you have your state-of-the-art over here, this price index. $1,500 has gotten so much closer to what you can get for $10,000 when you're talking about, the super gimmicky high-end boutique products. Chasing the last 5% of that performance, if you're going to spend that money, that 5% gets that much more expensive, and the diminishing returns gets that much steeper. And I definitely would second John Darko when it comes to that steepening of the return on investment, or that steepening curve of those diminishing returns. They're almost butting up against each other these days. Trust me when I say I have no regret selling my 5-figure multi-box setup. Not only is this a product that Amanda can pick up the remote, hit play, and start playing music that she likes right away, I don't have to write out a manual of how to use these 6 different boxes, in which order they have to be turned on. And oh, by the way, don't ever forget to turn this one off because you'll blow the tubes, etc., etc., etc. Now. It's going to be really interesting. I just gave this the #1 on my list out of 20 integrated amplifiers. The timing could be perfect and you guys could start screaming at me in 4 weeks' time, 3 or 4 weeks' time. Look what showed up. I have the Cyrus One HD integrated amplifier. It is a hybrid Class D amplifier, not AB. It is a hybrid Class D amplifier with a decent sized toroidal transformer in it. I paid the same exact amount for it, retail, brand new, as this one. So we're talking about full-on integrated amplifiers with onboard DACs, onboard phono sections. Some key differences are going to be in the simplicity of the functionality, but those amp sections are going to be put to the test as well as their onboard DACs. Things are about to get really interesting in the 2-channel household. So until I can review that in the next 3 weeks while I run it in, we're going to have a walk down memory lane with some just awesome little speakers from Pat McGinty, the Meadowlark Swifts. Gosh, they just don't make them like this anymore. Such a neat little speaker. That will be next week's review. I hope many of you tune into it because I've traded several emails with Pat McGinty and he is often running on the cutting edge and he is very much headlong into active only speakers at some pretty interesting price points. So until then, folks, I thank you for tuning in. I hope I've gained a few new subscribers for the outlook and the value that this channel brings to you. I say it like it is. My money's where my mouth is. And, as the week goes on, see it to DMX. Too bad. Wish you didn't do what you did. And, we got one life to live, brother. Let's make the most of it, everybody. Let's love one another and be kind to one another and not push each other to do things that we can't take back. Have a great week, y'all. B-roll. I guess I forgot something that was very important, especially I could already hear the unwritten messages in the comment section to me. While I was going off on how I already named this the best of what I've owned, several of you are still going to be like, well, okay, how does it sound? Here's where I'm going to place this for simplicity's sake. Between the Name 5SI and the Lugsman 550. Now, why those two and not the Unison Research Unico P, your #2 go-to? The Unison Research is more of a narrow-focused product. While it has good bass and it has good support for the bass, it's not the most extreme in the transients at the top end. And it's not the most revealing. It's just a very well-defined mid-range integrated amplifier that does voicing like nobody's business. And if you want something that's from top to bottom exceptional, that's why I would say the Lugsman 550, its Class A amp section, very smooth, very liquidy from the bottom all the way to the top until it runs out of headroom. And that's why it fell to its 3rd location on my list. Now, many people think that I don't like the name at all. It's not that I didn't like the name and what it did with the speakers. It just played it too safe to be an integrated amplifier that would stay in my stable. When I have products on hand that can do something that much better, there's no reason to keep a product like the name on hand, because it's not going to do. I would keep products on hand that will flesh out speakers in a different way. Let's put it that way. The name could help me in differentiating the character of the different speakers I have, and it did do that in the 3 weeks that I was using that. However, now that I have the Peachtree, it does what the name does, only better top to bottom. This has better grip on the bass. It has more fleshed out transients at the top end. Definitely helps with the treble. There's just more treble energy with this, but there's no fatigue factor. And even with the Peachtree Deco 125 Sky, that definitely was a lower quality amp section for Class D. I could hear that it would give up the ghost the harder I pushed it. There was just a little bit more of that classic Class D kind of little bit of harshness in the upper registers, much like the Nero, a $250 price point Class D amp section. You're only going to get so much out of that. So with this Peachtree, this is definitely my reference class integrated amplifier. It has such a consistency from the bottom to the top that this is the amplifier I can use now to test the characteristics of all the different speakers that I bring forth. There would have to be another integrated amplifier that performs so much better in order to do that with the different speakers to knock this off of its pedestal for me. So in that regards, it's not to say that at some point, if I don't find an absolute killer deal on a Nova 500, you may find a Nova 500 in my stable in the future. But for right now, for what it does, this is my choice.